When I pulled into my driveway at 6:30 on a Tuesday evening, I noticed my daughter Emma's silver SUV parked in front of my house. That wasn't unusual. She had a key and often stopped by. What was unusual was the black Mercedes I didn't recognize parked right behind it, and the silver Honda that belonged to my brother-in-law parked across the street. I had been at my book club, the same one I'd attended every Tuesday for the past 12 years, and I wasn't expecting company. I walked through my front door and immediately heard voices in the dining room. When I turned the corner, I saw 5 people sitting at my table. My daughter Emma, my son-in-law Brandon, my younger sister Janet, a woman in her 60s wearing a gray blazer who I'd never seen before, and a man in a suit with a leather briefcase open in front of him. Emma looked up first. "Mom," she said, and her smile was too bright, too forced. "You're home. We need to talk." I set my purse on the side table. My hands were already shaking, though I didn't know why yet. Just instinct, maybe. The same instinct that had helped me catch accounting fraud for 36 years before I retired. "What's going on?" I asked. "Is someone hurt? Is everything okay?" "Everyone's fine, Mom," Brandon said. He stood up, pulled out a chair. "Why don't you sit down?" "I'd rather stand," I said. "And I'd like to know why there are strangers in my house." The woman in the blazer smiled. She had one of those professional smiles that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm Carol Henderson. I'm a geriatric care specialist. Your daughter asked me to come speak with you today." I looked at Emma. "You brought a geriatric care specialist to my house without asking me?" "We were worried you'd say no," Janet said quietly. "And Mom, we're just concerned. We love you." The man in the suit cleared his throat. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm David Wolfe. I'm an attorney. I've been working with your family to help organize some estate planning documents that we think would be beneficial for you." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Estate planning documents, a geriatric specialist, my family, all gathered in my dining room without warning me. "What kind of documents?" I asked. Emma stood up and came around the table. She put her hand on my arm, and I noticed her nails were freshly manicured. When was the last time she'd had money for a manicure? "Mom, please sit down. We've been talking, and we're all really worried about you. You've been living alone for 4 years now since Dad died, and you're not getting any younger." "I'm 58 years old, Emma. I'm not ancient. But you've been forgetting things," Brandon said. He pulled out his phone. "Last month you called Emma 3 times asking what time Olivia's soccer game was. You forgot you'd already asked." That was a lie. I had called once to confirm the time because Emma had given me 2 different times in 2 different text messages. I started to say this, but the attorney interrupted. "Mrs. Patterson, we have some concerns about your financial management as well. Your daughter tells me you've been making some unusual investment decisions. You withdrew a significant amount from your savings account last year." I had withdrawn $40,000 to renovate my bathroom and kitchen. I had shown Emma the plans. I had hired licensed contractors. The work had increased my home value by $60,000. "You mean the renovation?" I asked. I showed everyone the plans. "But Mom, you didn't need to do that," Emma said. "The house was fine the way it was. That money could have been saved for your future care needs." The geriatric specialist leaned forward. "Mrs. Patterson, I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've seen this pattern many times. People in your age group often resist accepting help. They want to maintain independence. But sometimes the most loving thing your family can do is step in before a crisis happens." "What crisis?" I asked. "I go to book club every week. I volunteer at the library on Thursdays. I have lunch with my friends. I manage 5 rental properties that bring in $8,000 a month. I cook my own meals. I drive myself everywhere." "What crisis are you talking about?" "The rental properties," Janet said. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "That's actually part of why we're concerned, Linda. Managing 5 properties is a lot. The tenants, the maintenance calls, the accounting. It's stressful. And you've seemed stressed lately." I looked at my sister. I had managed those properties for 15 years. I had been a CPA for 36 years before I retired. I knew how to keep books. I knew how to hire property managers. I knew what I was doing. "I'm not stressed, Janet. I'm busy. There's a difference." The attorney opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "Mrs. Patterson, what we're proposing is actually quite simple and would make your life much easier. This is a power of attorney document that would allow your daughter to help you manage your financial affairs. You'd still make the big decisions, but Emma would be there to help with the day-to-day tasks. The property management, the bill paying, the investment monitoring. I don't need help with those things. But Mom, Emma said, and her voice cracked just a little. What happens if something happens to you? What if you have a fall? What if you have a stroke like Grandma did? Right now, if you were incapacitated, no one could access your accounts to pay your bills. No one could manage the properties. Everything would fall apart. We're just trying to protect you. Carol, the geriatric specialist, nodded sympathetically. This is very common resistance, Linda. May I call you Linda? It's part of the aging process to feel defensive when family tries to help. But I can see how much your daughter loves you. She's trying to make sure you're taken care of. I looked at the papers on the table. Even from where I stood, I could see there were a lot of them. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Emma's smile faltered. We've been talking about it for a few months, ever since you mentioned you were thinking about selling the rental properties. I had never said I was thinking about selling the rental properties. I had mentioned once that I might sell one of them because the neighborhood was gentrifying and the value had tripled. One property, not all 5. When did I say I wanted to sell all of them? You did, Mom, Emma insisted. At Sunday dinner last month, you said managing them was getting to be too much. I had said the opposite. I had said I was considering buying a 6th property because the rental market was so strong. I looked at my daughter, at my son-in-law, at my sister, at these 2 strangers in my dining room, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Something like the moment when you're doing an audit and you find the discrepancy, and suddenly you understand that someone has been stealing, and they've been doing it for a long time. I need to think about this, I said. I need time to review these documents with my own attorney. The room went silent. Then Brandon laughed. Actually laughed. Linda, he said, and I hated the way he said my name, like he was talking to a child. That's exactly the kind of response that worries us. Being paranoid about family trying to help you. Being unwilling to trust the people who love you. These are warning signs. Warning signs of what? I asked. Early cognitive decline, Carol said gently. Paranoia, suspicion of loved ones. Rigidity in thinking. Resistance to change. I see it all the time in my practice. The attorney tapped the papers. Mrs. Patterson, I should mention that we've also prepared some documents regarding your health care. A medical power of attorney, a living will, and a physician's directive. There's also a letter here from Dr. Richard Chen. He's a geriatric psychiatrist who consulted on your case. My case? I've never met a Dr. Richard Chen. He reviewed the information your family provided, the attorney said smoothly. Based on their observations, he recommends a full psychiatric evaluation to assess your capacity to make financial and medical decisions. I looked at each of them. My daughter, who hadn't been able to hold a job in 3 years. My son-in-law, who drove a $70,000 truck and wore a Rolex but was always asking to borrow money. My sister, who had declared bankruptcy twice. A stranger who was a geriatric care specialist. And an attorney who I'd never met. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, please, Emma started. Get out of my house, all of you, now. Mrs. Patterson, this is not a rational response, Carol said. This kind of hostile reaction is actually another indicator that intervention may be necessary. I walked to my front door and opened it. I said, get out. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm calling the police. They left, but slowly, gathering their papers, making a show of concern. Emma was the last one out. She stopped at the door. Mom, she said, and there were tears in her eyes. Real tears, or maybe just good acting. We're doing this because we love you. Think about it, please. I closed the door in her face and locked it. I locked the deadbolt too, and the chain. Then I went upstairs to my bedroom, sat on my bed, and for the first time since my husband died 4 years ago, I cried. Not because I was scared. Not because I believed anything they'd said. I cried because my only child, the daughter I had raised alone after her father died, the daughter I had put through college, the daughter whose wedding I had paid for, whose house down payment I had given her, whose credit card debt I had paid off twice, had just tried to take everything from me. But I only cried for 10 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and I opened the folder I had created 6 months ago. The one titled Property Tax Records 2024, but which actually contained something much more important. 6 months ago, I had gotten a phone call from my bank. There had been an attempt to access my accounts from an IP address in Portland. That's where Emma and Brandon lived. The bank had blocked it because I had two-factor authentication enabled. I had immediately changed all my passwords and set up alerts. Then I had started paying attention. I noticed that Emma had started calling me more often. Casual calls, asking about my health, suggesting I seemed tired, mentioning that her friend's mother had just moved into a lovely assisted living facility. I noticed that she had started bringing Brandon to our Sunday dinners, and he would casually ask questions about my properties, my investments, my insurance policies. I noticed that Janet had started mentioning, over and over, how stressful it must be to manage everything alone. So I had started documenting. I had kept every text message. I had recorded our phone conversations. Oregon is a one-party consent state, which means I could legally record conversations I was part of. I had saved every email. I had screenshots of every time Emma had tried to access my computer when she thought I was in the kitchen making coffee. I had also hired a private investigator. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know if my instincts were right. Within 2 weeks, he had found everything I needed to know. Emma and Brandon were $78,000 in credit card debt. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house 8 months ago. Brandon's contracting business was failing. He'd lost his 3 biggest clients in the past year. Emma's boutique, the one I had given her $30,000 to start 3 years ago, had closed last month. She'd never told me. They needed money, a lot of it, fast. And I had it. My husband's life insurance had been $500,000. I had invested it carefully. Between that, my retirement accounts, my savings, and the 5 rental properties, I was worth just over $2 million. To my daughter and her husband, I wasn't a person. I was a solution to their problems. I had also done something else. Something none of them knew about. 8 weeks ago, I had met with my attorney. My real attorney. The one I'd used for 20 years. The one who had handled my husband's estate. I had created an irrevocable trust with an independent trustee, a lawyer named Patricia Ford who specialized in estate law. I had moved most of my liquid assets into that trust. The rental properties were already in an LLC. On paper, I had about $70,000 in accessible accounts. Everything else was protected. I had also updated my will. Everything would go to charity. The local library system, the women's shelter, college scholarships for single mothers going back to school. Not $1 for Emma or Brandon. Not $1 for Janet, who had sat at my table and talked about having me declared incompetent. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls, most from Emma, some from Brandon, a few from Janet. I blocked all their numbers. Then I called Patricia Ford. "Linda," she said when she answered, "I was expecting your call. I got some interesting documents served to me yesterday. Your family is filing for emergency conservatorship." I had expected it, but hearing it still felt like being punched. On what grounds? They have statements from 3 people saying you're showing signs of severe cognitive decline and are a danger to yourself. They have a letter from a doctor, Richard Chen, saying he evaluated you and recommends immediate psychiatric intervention and financial oversight. I've never met Dr. Richard Chen, I said. I know. I already looked him up. He's a geriatric psychiatrist in Portland. He's also Brandon's uncle. He wrote that evaluation without ever meeting you, based solely on information provided by your family. That's grounds for losing his medical license. What do? We fight, Patricia said. And Linda, based on everything you've sent me over the past 6 months, we're going to win. The hearing was set for 3 weeks later. In those 3 weeks, I did not speak to my family. I did not answer their calls from new numbers. I did not open the door when Emma showed up at my house crying. I did not read the letter she slipped under my door about how much she loved me and how she just wanted to help. Instead, I lived my life. I went to book club. I had lunch with my friends. I went to my doctor for a full physical and cognitive assessment. I met with a neuropsychologist who did 3 hours of testing. I met with my financial advisor and had him prepare a full report on my investments and property management. I met with my property manager and had her prepare documentation showing I was completely on top of every tenant, every repair, every expense. I also met with the private investigator again. He had found more information. Dr. Richard Chen had been reported to the medical board twice before for similar violations. Writing evaluations without seeing patients. He was under investigation. Brandon's uncle had a gambling problem and had lost his medical practice. He was working as a consultant, writing reports for a fee. The day of the hearing, I wore a navy suit and my pearls. The same pearls my husband had given me for our 20th anniversary. I brought 3 lawyers, Patricia Ford and 2 associates. I brought my doctor. I brought the neuropsychologist. I brought my financial advisor. I brought my property manager. I brought character witnesses, friends I'd had for 30 years who could testify to my sharpness and competence. But most importantly, I brought evidence, video recordings from the security cameras I'd installed in my house 6 months ago. Audio recordings of phone conversations where Emma and Brandon discussed how to get access to my accounts. Text messages between Emma and Janet planning the intervention, the fake psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Chen. Bank records showing the attempted unauthorized access. Documentation of all their lies about what I'd said and done. Emma and Brandon came with 1 lawyer, a young guy who looked fresh out of law school. They sat on the other side of the courtroom. Emma wouldn't look at me. Brandon stared straight ahead. When the judge asked if I wanted to present evidence, Patricia stood up. "Your Honor," she said, "we'd like to show you something." She played the video from my dining room, the one from 6 months ago where Emma and Brandon sat at my table after I'd gone to bed, discussing how they were going to convince me I was losing my mind. Where Brandon said they needed to move fast before I changed my will. Where Emma talked about which properties to sell first to get the most cash. She played the audio recording of Emma calling Janet, explaining the plan, how they'd bring in the geriatric specialist and the lawyer to intimidate me. How they'd make me doubt myself by constantly telling me I was forgetting things. How they'd use Dr. Chen, Brandon's uncle, to write a psychiatric evaluation without actually examining me. She presented the fake evaluation itself, along with documentation from the medical board showing Dr. Chen was already under investigation. She presented my recent medical records, perfect cognitive function, no signs of dementia, memory loss, or impaired judgment. Blood pressure normal. Vision, fine. All my cancer screenings up to date. She presented the financial analysis. My investments were sound and had grown by 7% in the past year. My properties were all profitable and well-maintained. My bills were paid on time. My credit score was 821. When it was over, the judge took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He looked tired. He looked disappointed. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of attempted fraud, elder financial abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Dr. Richard Chen will be reported to the Medical Licensing Board." He looked at Emma and Brandon. "I've been on the bench for 22 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of things. But this is one of the most egregious cases of family exploitation I've encountered. Your mother is clearly competent. She's more than competent. She was smart enough to see what you were doing and protect herself. You should be ashamed." Emma started crying. Real crying this time, I think. But I felt nothing watching her. Nothing but a cold kind of clarity. 2 weeks later, Emma and Brandon were arrested. Attempted financial exploitation of an elder. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Soliciting a fraudulent medical document. The district attorney was very interested in Dr. Chen, who admitted under pressure that he'd written the evaluation without ever meeting me, based solely on information Brandon had provided. He lost his medical license. He was fined $50,000. Brandon and Emma were both charged. The trial was 4 months later. It didn't last long. The evidence was overwhelming. Emma got 18 months in prison. Brandon got 2 years. They both got 5 years probation after release and were ordered to pay restitution. Not that I wanted their money, but the judge insisted. Janet wasn't charged because she testified against them, admitting that Emma had pressured her to participate, but I never spoke to her again anyway. Emma called me from prison. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, crying, apologizing, saying she never meant for it to go this far, that it was all Brandon's idea, that she loved me, that she was sorry. I deleted them without listening all the way through. Brandon's mother wrote me a letter. She said I was destroying their family. She said her son had made a mistake but didn't deserve prison. She said I was cold and heartless. I sent the letter to my attorney without reading past the first page. My friends asked if I was okay, if I was lonely, if I regretted pressing charges. They looked at me with pity. This 58-year-old woman with no daughter at her birthday dinners, no grandchildren visiting on holidays. But I wasn't lonely. I had friends who actually cared about me. Real friends, not people who saw me as an ATM. I had my book club, my volunteer work at the library, my rental properties that I managed just fine, thank you very much. I also started something new. I created a foundation, the Linda Patterson Foundation for Elder Rights. We provide free legal help for seniors facing financial abuse from family members. We pay for independent psychiatric evaluations when families try to have their elderly relatives declared incompetent. We provide emergency funds for seniors who need to move quickly to safe housing. In the first year, we helped 19 people. 19 elderly people whose children or siblings or nieces and nephews saw them as targets instead of human beings. We saved them a combined $4.3 million in assets that family members were trying to steal. I sleep better now than I have in years. I swim every morning at the YMCA. I've started traveling. I went to Italy last spring. I'm planning a trip to Japan next year. I take my friends out to dinner. I spoil my book club with expensive wine. I donate to causes I care about. People ask me if I miss my daughter, if I wish things had ended differently, if I regret not giving her another chance. The answer is no. Because giving her another chance would have meant giving her access to my life, my assets, my autonomy. And she had already shown me what she would do with that access. I spent 36 years as an accountant. I knew how to spot fraud. I knew when the numbers didn't add up. I knew when someone was lying to me. And I had learned, through years of auditing companies and catching embezzlers, that some people will steal from anyone if they think they can get away with it. Even from their own mother. Emma gets out in 6 months. She's already sent letters through her lawyer asking if we can reconcile, asking if I'll help her get back on her feet, asking if I can forgive her. I sent one letter back. Through my attorney, because I won't communicate with her directly, I told her that forgiveness doesn't mean restoration. I told her I hoped she would rebuild her life, but she would do it without my money and without my help. I told her that she made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. Some people think I'm cold. Some people think I'm cruel. They say family is family, that blood is thicker than water, that I should give her another chance. But I know the full saying. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The relationships you choose, the people who earn your trust, those bonds are stronger than biological connections. And my daughter didn't choose a loving relationship with me. She chose my money. She chose to try to rob me of my autonomy, my dignity, my right to control my own life. She chose to call me incompetent, to try to have me declared mentally ill, to put strangers in my dining room to intimidate me into signing away everything I'd worked for. Those were her choices. My choice was to protect myself, to fight back, to make sure she and anyone else who thinks elderly people are easy targets understand that we're not, that we can be smart enough, strong enough, and prepared enough to defend ourselves. I'm 58 years old. I could live another 30 years. And I'm going to live them on my own terms, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I have. I'm going to live them free from the weight of toxic relationships and people who only see me as a resource to be exploited. And if my story helps even one other person recognize the warning signs, document the evidence, and protect themselves from family members who would rather steal than earn, then every difficult moment was worth it. I'm not a victim. I'm not a cautionary tale. I'm not a sad old woman whose daughter betrayed her. I'm a survivor. I'm a fighter. I'm proof that you can love someone and still protect yourself from them, that you can grieve what you thought you had while celebrating what you saved. And I'm healing. Every single day, I'm healing. And I've never been more free.